Hello and a very warm welcome to this latest edition of Talking Germany. And my guest today is one of the busiest and most visionary designers here in Germany. And here he is in person, Werner Aisslinger. Thank you very much for joining us here today on Talking Germany. Great stuff.
Thanks for being here.
Great. Now, during well over 2 decades in the design business, Werner Aisslinger has put his stamp on many things. Chairs, sofas, lamps and watches, as well as on more complex systems like offices, kitchens and hotels. What's more, his prize-winning creations have gone on display at numerous prestigious locations, such as the MoMA in New York and the Vitra Design Museum here in Germany. He's also recently had an exhibition here in Berlin called The Home of the Future, so it should be fascinating to hear what he can tell us about how we may or may not be living in the years to come. First question, Mr. Aisslinger, why does the world need designers?
Design is a kind of a funny profession, and I'm not sure if it's a profession for the future, because design, the base is industrial design. So it was kind of founded in the industrial age. Now we are living in a kind of a digital age. So the question is if the profession for an analog industrial designer is still needed or still important. I'm not so sure. So I wouldn't say that we designers are super important and we change the world. I would say that there will always be a need for people to create things, but I'm not so kind of optimistic about the profession in general.
Well, just how do you sound as though you're going to be somebody who in about 3 weeks' time is going to be out of a job, who's going to be redundant. How do you describe yourself as a designer? Why are you important? What do you do that the world needs?
Yeah, I'm doing everything and nothing. So I do now I do a lot of things. I do kind of one-offs. I do real industrial projects for big clients, for big industries. But I do also kind of experimental things. I do material researches. I do sometimes also cultural orientated work, like museum exhibitions, or I work with galleries. So it's more about the concept, about the vision. So I try to open up the kind of the spectrum of my work in different fields, and that makes it interesting for me. Yeah. So it's not arts, and I'm not an engineer, but everything in between happens.
Sounds good. I just want to probe one little bit more about your concept of what designers are, because you said, a very interesting quote, you said the designer is no longer an inventor, not a composer, he's a DJ. All he does is remix.
Yeah, that happens, because it's also, you cannot say from yourself as a designer that you're always reinventing or inventing things from scratch. There's always something, there's always a typology of objects or products before you. So you always learn from history, you learn from production history, and sometimes you just compose things new, you organize them new. So it's not that you, it's like you say, you're kind of a DJ, like you're mixing things or...
Great stuff. The designer as DJ. First impressions there from Werner Aisslinger. Here's more.
The Loft Cube, unveiled in 2003 in the garden of a contemporary art space in suburban Berlin. Designed as a mobile home for urban nomads. The cube catapulted its maker, Werner Aisslinger, to international stardom. His focus is very much on future living solutions. A recent exhibition gave visitors an insight into Aisslinger's visions. It was called Home of the Future. Its bathroom has a tub made of textile that can be rolled up. Fog-collecting fabrics pass on steam to plants. The kitchen of tomorrow comprises a greenhouse-like biotope where food is grown as well as cooked. The aquarium is a crucial component. The fish excrement is recycled as fertiliser for the adjoining vegetable gardens. Here you'll also find mushrooms thriving on old coffee grounds.
It's fun and really nice to create something of your own and to be able to monitor what you're eating.
That would be the preferred future for me, to use the recycles and the ecological system again.
Absolutely brilliant, because it isn't 100% about function. It's about life.
Werner Aisslinger is considered one of Germany's most visionary designers. He's picked up a slew of international accolades and has a clientele including high-profile furniture manufacturers such as Vitra in Switzerland. This stitched furniture is made from polyester fibre. The gel chair was commissioned by Italian design firm Capellini, and this is his eco-friendly hemp chair. The Julie chair is already a modern classic. It's featured as a permanent exhibit at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. Aisslinger has his own think tank in Berlin. His team are currently working on an interior design project for a hotel, located in a 1950s building in the city, currently undergoing renovation. The hotel is due to open its doors at the end of the year. Right now, the building is still a construction site. Up here on the 10th story, Aisslinger envisages a hotel restaurant inside a kind of greenhouse with fantastic views of the city.
We also devised an interesting idea for the elevators. You feel like you're traveling through the sections of a big tree, and you end up in the branches at the top.
Flora serve both form and function for the designer. The chair farm grows on its own, with a little watering, of course. A metal corset is in place to train budding plants into chairs.
You could develop plants that would no longer need a steel corset. They'd know they'd have to bend to the right after 30 centimeters and then left again. In a perfect scenario, you could watch a pre-programmed table grow out of the ground.
And today, he's our guest on Talking Germany, Werner Aisslinger.
I don't know where to start. There's so much interesting stuff in there. We'll talk about the chair in a second and wood as a material. Let's talk about the hotel project. Tell me a little bit more about that, because hotels at the moment are very important here in Berlin. Just explain why yours is different, significantly different.
Yeah, I mean, we started, the hotel company is very innovative, and they asked us to develop a story. So it's about storytelling, and that's interesting in design as well. It's about the narrative qualities of design. So let's say designers in the future should be more storytellers instead of engineers or people who just construct an item. So, and the hotel, there's a story behind that's called Urban Jungle, and Urban Jungle is something that is linked to the place where the hotel is. There's the zoo, the Berlin Zoo behind, so you look into the zoo from the backside and the front side. You are confronted with the center of the city, like Breitscheidplatz, the center of Charlottenburg. So in the end, you are in between city, like and nature, and nature with all the animals. So it's kind of we say urban jungle because urban jungle also is something like has to do with music, with club culture, with subculture. So, and we try to find a way that the people feel, the visitors or the guests of the hotel feel like they are in a totally different atmosphere, and they are in a world that can only be Berlin. Because the problem about hotels is that most big chains, they offer you the same design, the same interior, the same atmosphere.
The same experience.
Wherever you are in the world. If you're in Tokyo or in Los Angeles or in London or in Berlin, you will always feel like, oh, where am I? And so with this project, we tried to make something that was unique and has to do with Berlin, with the location, with the people, with the atmosphere of Berlin. So there's more, it's not a big, we're not talking about interior design all the time, about materials and finishes. It's more about creating a story for the guest. That's the project.
Fascinating. The designer as storyteller. I like it. In the report, we went back to sort of pretty much close to the beginning of your career. I'd like to go back much further than that to your Bavarian childhood.
Okay.
What kind of a child were you?
It was a kind of in a Allgäu. Allgäu is an area in the south of Bavaria.
Very beautiful, mountainous, lush.
I was skiing a lot as a kid, so one ski lift was behind the house. So I was growing up in a kind of a typical, let's say, provincial beauty city. And so, but I felt when I was kind of 15, 16, I felt that I need to go to a city where the things happen that you always read about or you see in
the big city
in the news. Yeah, so I felt like being part of creating things and not just kind of reading about them or seeing them in TV in the show. So that was the reason why I left this kind of nice ambient.
Okay, but your parents were not designers or architects?
No, both of my parents were teachers. So design or architecture was not very important in my childhood.
So where
my brother got an architect, so we were both...
Your brother's an architect?
Yeah,
you're a designer? Yeah. Where does that come from? There must be some reason for that common ground.
I think there were people who are... Also, my mother was always very creative, so I think there was a creative kind of atmosphere in our kind of childhood. But yeah, there were no family members doing these kind of jobs.
I see. So you went off. You came to Berlin. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you came to Berlin, were you looking for, as a young design student, did you want to be somebody who was going to shape and remodel the world, or did you just want an interesting career?
It was when you come to a city from a province to a city like Berlin. When you're 20, you look for many things. You look for an exciting city, for an exciting life. Like also, you go out in the evening. So it's kind of a mix of the university, of the kind of your studies, and also the atmosphere of a city. So it's kind of a mixture that makes you believe you're doing the right thing at this time. So, but I thought it's something that fits to my kind of abilities and to my dreams to create things, but I didn't know where I'm going to end.
That's the word I want to pick up on, and that's the reason why I asked the question, because designers and architects, they tend to get a sort of a stamp. They tend to be put into a category, and the stamp that you have is that, and I said it at the beginning of the show, you are a visionary architect. Yeah, and you were just talking about your dreams as a young, a visionary designer. Yeah, as a young designer, you were talking about the dreams that you have. Yeah, do you view yourself as do you accept that label as a visionary designer?
Yeah, in fact, I like it because there's a lot of designers doing just daily work. I mean, there's a lot of design is kind of a business, and it's a service, a creative service. So there's millions of people seeing it only this way, without trying to explore something or to create visions or experiments. So if people call me or see me like this, I'm okay. I like it.
That's interesting. I'd like to talk about the tradition of design in Germany, because if you say outside Germany, if you were to say to people, I'll give you two words, and the two words are Germany and design, I think 9 out of 10 people would probably say Bauhaus.
Yeah, but Bauhaus nowadays, it's kind of something from history. But at the time Bauhaus happened in the 20s, it was super innovative, super visionary, and utopistic in a way. Yeah. So these ideas of the Bauhaus people to combine industry and creation and crafts and build and to create buildings with a lot of light and a new kind of atmosphere and a new quality of life. So these people were in their time. They were very far ahead of the time. So I like the Bauhaus in a way. I mean, the aesthetics, like the chairs look like and the furniture, I don't use them in my home. They are kind of they're good pieces in their time and very, very up to date. You said you're happy with the idea. You're enthusiastic about the idea of being described as a visionary architect, and you used the word utopian there. What is your utopia? Yeah, some of my projects. I mean, the Loft Cube project, this mobile home or mobile house, which you can use on high-rise buildings and transport them from one place to the other, or this kind of chair farm project, the growing chair. These are projects which might not be real now. They might be a vision or a utopian lifestyle in the next 10 or 20 years. So I like to, if it ever happens, you don't know, but I like to create these kind of, I say, sets or these ideas. Who are you designing for? Yeah, designer is always a applied artist. So in the end, what you do should be used by somebody.
Exactly.
So if you're an artist, maybe you create it for yourself and you say, okay, I like this piece of art, and hopefully some gallerist or museum likes it as well. But as a designer, you're always linked to this kind of usability of an object. So in the end, you always create it for people, for clients, for customers, for users. So it's not, you don't do it for yourself or just for fun, or there's always a link to the real user.
Okay. We'll come back to that point in just a second. Okay. Werner Aisslinger is based, I haven't told you this yet, but it's a very important point, and it's something that we'll also have to talk about. He's based both in Berlin and in Singapore. That's an interesting aspect of what he's doing these days. Berlin is a bit of a boom town at the moment. Lots of people are moving to the city, bringing in money and buying up property. It's having quite an impact, I can tell you, on the community at the local level. Before we get Werner's take on the latest developments in the German capital, we have this report on similar trends in the western city of Düsseldorf. There's a lot of interesting issues that report throws up. Let's just begin. I'd like you to explain, because that story was in Düsseldorf, in Western Germany. We're here in Berlin, in the capital, and you live in the Kreuzberg district of Berlin. Just explain for the viewers what kind of district that is before we get going.
Yeah, Kreuzberg was always the west of Berlin. So before the reunification, it was also in the west. I came also to Berlin before the wall came down, to West Berlin. And Kreuzberg was always the chaos area. In a way, there were always the young, like the punks and the political left-wing people. And it was always a wild mixture. I think also the Green Party has partly been founded
very
there.
Strong roots in Kreuzberg. Yeah.
So in a way, it was always a wild mixture also of various nationalities. There were always a big community from Turkey and from other countries. So it was the wild mixture of a capital, like you experience it in London also. So in a way, I think Berlin was always most exciting kind of neighborhood in.
And this is interesting because I've actually had people here on the show relatively well off. For example, you talk about the multi-ethnic mix in Kreuzberg. I've had well-off Turks who have lived in Kreuzberg all their lives, who are saying that they're being forced out of the district, like the people in the report we've just seen in Düsseldorf, because of the process of gentrification. That's the word that we use for this debate.
Yeah. No, you're right.
What's your take?
Yeah, that's a problem when there's apartment kind of free. They won't rent it nowadays to some kind of poor families or whatever Turkish worker people. They would give it always to kind of whatever doctors or
designers.
Well-doing, maybe designers, but designers mostly are not well-doing. But so I think this slightly happens. Yeah, I've also read articles about Turkish people who live now far outside the city, and they come on weekends. They come back to Kreuzberg just to inhale or experience their old district and their.
That's a sad story.
Yeah,
that's sad. That's like the people we've just been hearing about in Düsseldorf again. It's the same thing. Is there a solution to the problem?
I think it's an evolution that can't be stopped somehow. I mean, I think there should be a regulation of maybe of a selection of investors. If somebody builds new places or renovates existing houses, to make sure that it's not only a luxury renovation or luxury new buildings, and also the rent per square meter should be limited in certain areas. Or so I think the policy is behind this topic, but I think that it's a very difficult thing. But without the political involvement, I think there will be a collapse of Kreuzberg in 5 years' time.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. One of the things we're talking about here is that people are increasingly mobile. People are increasingly moving from one place to another. And you, a couple of years ago, we saw it in the first report. You came up with your idea of the Loft Cube, partly to address that. I mean, I know it wasn't necessarily a practical answer in the sense that it was going to be mass-produced, but it was an answer to issues of migration and what sort of people in the the fashionable term for it is nomadism.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, the concept came up when I saw all these flat rooftops of high-rise buildings in Berlin, and they are in every big city. So the square meters, or thousands of square meters or square kilometers of kind of nice sunny rooftops, which are not used. Nobody is going there. There's some billboards. There's some. There's nothing really. Some air conditioning boxes or something. So I thought, why not kind of creating a mobile, a transportable piece of architecture that can be lifted up to this high-rise building for permanent or non-permanent, and to make people living on these rooftops because it's sunny.
It's a lovely place to be. Yeah.
So that was and so I created this Loft Cube, which looks more like a soft-edged white cube, but it should look like a UFO. I didn't want to create something that
UFO. Yeah.
UFO, yeah. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't look like something that wants to belong to the existing architecture.
Yeah.
It should look like something that has just landed for a certain period.
And it does. It's eye-catching.
Yeah.
And tell me this, I mean, I mentioned earlier, because this is an important point about what you're doing in recent years. You're now no longer just based in Berlin, you're also based in Singapore. So that makes you a little bit of a nomad, doesn't it?
Yeah, but like 5 years ago, I started a small studio in Singapore. And I did this because I traveled a lot to Asia and also for work. And Asia is so fast, and so the evolution is so speedy. And I think that we in Europe, we are living in a stagnating world. So I think the best times of Europe are over, and
I hope you're not right.
No, I think we might conserve it for some 20 years or 30 years, and I think we Europeans will be the zoo for like a nice Disney world for the rest of the world in the next 50 years.
How much pressure have you put yourself under and your office under by going global, going onto the global market in this way?
It's difficult. And what the funny thing is, when I started my studio in Singapore and I started to work for the first big clients in China, they were always very critical about my Singapore studio, because they say, hey, Werner, we book you as a German designer, not that our projects are being elaborated somewhere in Asia with...
They want made in Germany to be made in Germany.
So they pushed me kind of to work on these projects in my Berlin studio, because they say, hey, we want your German input and your German design philosophy. We don't want to get something which might be worked out by some Chinese or Asian designers in Asia. So it was kind of a funny situation, because I thought I'd come a step further to these kind of new markets and interesting projects or clients. But in the end, they saw it more, I wouldn't say negative, but they were not so convinced that it's a good step for German designers. So it's kind of...
That's interesting.
Interesting.
That's very interesting. Wow. Well, sustainability has for quite some time now been a major concern for Werner Aisslinger. It's all about addressing the fact that we all need to learn to be a little less wasteful with our resources. Before we talk more, here's a report on a woman here in Berlin, by the way, who's addressing this problem by turning to what's called upcycling. I had never heard of upcycling. I don't know whether I don't live in the real world, but is upcycling a concept that that was familiar to you, is familiar to you?
Yeah, it's very popular since last 2 or 3 years.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of young designers create things that are using kind of components from other products or existing products. So it's kind of a new kind of concept of creating something out of older things, and to prolong life cycles.
Do you do anything like this? Do you have upcycled objects in your apartment, or is that something that you work with in any way?
No, I mean, I like the concept. In my exhibition recently in a Berlin museum, I showed a facade which was textile covered, so kind of upcycled, and I showed a car which was covered by a textile kind of cover. So it was the idea of prolonging life cycles of existing old cars by upcycling them visually. So you kind of create a new car you dress your car in a way.
You dress your car, I like that, yeah.
Yeah, but this was more kind of a, let's say, for an exhibition you do things in a creative way. It was not a real product idea. But yesterday I read from a very interesting product from a British designer. He made a small electronic piece that gives you the chance to use your old stereo boxes with your iPhone via Bluetooth. So in the end, you can use your 20-year-old stereo boxes.
So your speakers.
Your speakers. Yeah. You can use them for your kind of iPhone sound or for your iPad. And this is a kind of a upcycling. So there's a small electronic piece which you connect to your old speaker, and then you get a kind of a new Bluetooth way of music experience. And that's kind of, these kind of projects start to happen more and more.
And they appeal to you. I know that one of the most important aspects of design for you, and where you see the future of design, is materials. And we were just talking about materials, or hearing about materials in that report. Tell me, what are the materials that I need to know about for the next 10, 20 years?
Yeah, it's more a general point of view that design is, new design and good design is always also based on materials and production methods. So you can always do wood chairs or wood tables, and you can always do steel furniture or steel objects, but there's thousands of new materials coming up every week or every month or every year, and I think designers must kind of be able to connect themselves, their new product ideas, with new materials and production methods.
Yep. Is this an example of a new material that you are?
Yeah, this is
because we asked you to bring along a load of things, and you brought along some very interesting objects, a spirit level, a pen that you use on a regular basis. But we're talking materials, so tell me about this. What's this all about?
Yeah, this is a knitted copper fiber, and the interesting thing is
copper fiber.
Yeah, it's kind of the production is the same like people are producing textiles for fashion industry, but recently they tried to make knitting kind of structures with metal fibers, and this is quite interesting because I think there's a new kind of world of products which can be imagined. We are working on a lighting project with this kind of structure, and I think it's kind of also the material is sometimes the start of a new product idea. So the product idea is not kind of starting from a sketch. Sometimes the material gives you the new direction for a new product idea.
That's interesting.
That's interesting, yeah.
One more that I'm interested in, the chair farm. Yeah? Just tell me a little bit more about how that works, whether that's a real sort of item for the future.
Yeah, the chair farm is more kind of an installation, like an artistic installation. It's not that we sell these chairs or they are really in production. Or so the system is you have a kind of a greenhouse and you have plants inside, and they grow inside a steel frame. So the steel frame gives the size of a chair. So in the end, after a certain time, you can kind of harvest your chair. And that's
I love that. I love the idea, harvesting the chair.
Yeah. So, and this is more a conceptual approach, what happens with the production of things in the next 10 or 20 years. And I think there's also genetic kind of changed plants which might already know what type of product they should be when they grow. So I think there's also evolution steps of this idea behind. But it's just it's not a very scientific approach I did. It's more kind of a concept to make people understand that maybe the industrial production is ended at some time, and it's more kind of there's more kind of a eco plantation system of creating products in the future.
Sounds just a little bit like science fiction. But it also sounds like what you were talking about earlier, visionary. This is the visionary bit, yeah? There's another side. There's another side to Werner Aisslinger. He's a big fan of vintage cars. So I guess that if he had had time, he'd like to have been at this year's Frankfurt Motor Show, where alongside the latest new state-of-the-art vehicles on the market, there were some very attractive vintage or classic cars on show. Well, the reason why we have this report on the show is because Werner Aisslinger isn't just into organic chairs, he's also into cars, he's also into vintage cars, yeah? I just said to you that I put it to you that you have a modest collection. And you were a little bit dismissive. I don't have a modest collection. You have 3 vintage cars.
Yeah, 3, but it's not big collector pieces, no Ferraris or so. It's cars which are not so valuable. But I like old cars. I think from an atmospheric point of view, when I drive only through the city with one of my old cars, you feel the leather, you feel you hear the motor. Like the new cars, you don't hear anything anymore, even if you drive 250 kilometers per hour. Yeah. So sometimes I rent new cars from airports when I go to a client, and I like to drive speedy with a very accurate new car, but there's no experience. It's boring in a way. And I think these old cars, they give you a special feeling. So I'm more into old cars.
Just tell me, the 3 cars you've got, what are they?
It's a Mercedes 450 SLC from 74, Porsche 928 from 78, and there's a T model, a daily car from Mercedes T model from 1990.
And that's the one you drive on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
Very nice, yeah. You mentioned earlier, and I thought it was quite interesting, you said that your mother had a slight influence on you choosing to become a designer eventually, moving in that direction. Yeah. And I know the answer to this question, but I'd like to hear it from you, that your father had an influence on your passion for cars, yeah?
Yeah, my father was always into cars, and he had also these kind of Mercedes cars in his... But I think, yeah, this was also generation-wise. I think in the 60s and 70s, a car was very important. It was kind of a, in a...
Especially here in Germany.
Yeah, in Germany, the Wiederaufbauzeit, or however you call it. So people were trying...
the economic miracle. What led to the economic miracle?
Yeah, but it was, I think, there was a gap in the German society of, I would say there was a gap of... people couldn't be patriotic, couldn't be... nationalism was always kind of not accepted after the Second World War anymore in Germany. So people, I think materialism, to have a nice car, a nice house, and to achieve these kind of levels, that was very important. It was kind of the goal for every German. So I think, in a way, car and, yeah.
And your father, a school teacher, had a Mercedes-Benz?
Yeah, but mostly the smaller ones.
Not what happened to it?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of sold them, and the last one he gave to my brother and me. So we were, as young students, we were kind of...
You were driving around as young students.
Yeah, but it was a kind of a old one then at this time.
Lovely. I like the image. We've got time, just time for our quick quiz at the end of the show, the traditional quiz. I'll give you 2 options, quick answer, yeah? Organic or industrial?
Organic.
Are you conventional or unconventional?
Unconventional, hopefully.
No. Wood or steel?
I would say both, huh?
Save or throw away?
Always save.
Do you prefer to drive a Porsche or a Mercedes?
Porsche.
Does design shape the world, or does it merely decorate it?
Shape, hopefully.
Great stuff. Thanks very much. That's your lot. With the thoughtful and thought-provoking Werner Aisslinger. There's more Talking Germany, including my blog and our archive on our website. You might also want to watch the German version of the show. That's Typisch Deutsch with Hajo Schumacher. For today, if you've enjoyed the show as much as I have, then do come back next week. Until then, bye-bye and tschüss.